Much more stronger now.
The bank to the bucket, so up, so the bucket to the rhythm of the boogie. I to the rhythm of the boogie, the beat. I dare go like simple.
Stack Girl Sarah here with David Levithan, who is filling in for my stead so that you can't actually see me. And David is now an honorary Stack Girl, who is good, woo! And he's interviewing Jay Asher and Carolyn Mackler. So we have this power YA triumvirate that I don't think I can ever duplicate again. David, feel free to start asking questions.
Right, so as the official collaboration consultant of so how did the two of you meet?
Well, it's a great story, David, because you didn't know this until about 2 weeks ago, but you are the reason Jay and I collaborated on The Future of Us. You were sort of the reason without knowing you were the reason. So it's a great story. About a year and a half ago, you were moderating a panel at the New York Public Library, several teen novelists. I was on the panel. And my last novel, Tangled, had recently come out. And while we were in the Q&A part of the panel, someone from the audience asked me what my dream project would be. And without realizing what my answer would be, which I generally don't recommend to people, but in this case I do recommend to people, I said I want to write a collaborative novel. I was very inspired by the collaborative novels that you, David, wrote. And I just thought it would be a very fun process to have the give and take as I was writing. And right afterwards, I thought to myself, wow, I want to write a collaborative novel, it's true. Went home, thought about who my dream co-author would be, and came up with Jay Asher. And I didn't know Jay very well. He had given a wonderful quote for Tangled. We met years ago and sort of debated about whether or not I remember it. And so I emailed him the next day and I said, I have a semi-crazy idea to run by you. And Jay immediately wrote back and said, anytime's a good time for crazy ideas. And then Jay, you can take over from the crazy idea bit.
Yeah, so she said she wanted to write a book together. And I said, let's do it. My part of the story is a lot shorter.
Mine's a little more long-winded.
But yeah, it was a huge honor. Because yeah, you're one of my favorite authors ever. And so to be asked to give a quote for your last book was a huge honor. Like, no idea. One day she's going to ask if I want to write a book with her.
One of the funny things that we've never talked about publicly is that Jay, when we asked Jay to give a quote for Tangled, and I didn't really know him, and he got back to my editor and said, I'm going to have a pass on giving a quote for Tangled because there's one sentence in the book that bothers me. And so I'm going to have to pass. And otherwise, I love the book. Love it, love it, love it. And so my editor told me, and I said, who is this Jay Asher? I said, go find out what sentence that is. And so we tracked it down. I tracked him down. I found out what the sentence was. I said, you know what, he's right. And I went back and looked at it, and I changed it. And it was such a sort of preview of our collaborative relationship. That's the way we write together. I mean, we have a lot of trust, and we're really comfortable with each other's feedback, and we really have a similar sensibility. So it was funny that it was like a few years before we ever worked together, I already felt like we were scrutinizing and improving on each other's work.
Well, one of the things that struck me, and I've told each of you this separately, was that when, for example, I write with Rachel, we are always trying to mess with each other and throw things and be like, here, take that, ha, here's a twist, here are 12 twists, deal with it, I don't have to deal with it, it's your chapter.
Nice.
But you guys, it's so much more seamless that it really, you feel it's very much tonally of a piece, and there aren't these wild up and downs and twists. I mean, there's certainly twists, it's not as if it's a particularly straightforward narrative there, but at the same time, it does feel that you are collaborative rather than competitive. And is this just naturally what came to be, or were there ever moments when you were feeling competitive?
I don't think we ever felt competitive. From the beginning, there were a couple reasons. One, we just, for whatever reason, decided, let's do a collaborative novel, but try to make it sound like just one person wrote it. And at the same time, we're both kind of control freaks. And so we didn't want to give up control of the whole chapter to somebody else. So we wanted to brainstorm the whole book, but then also have just free reign to edit each other. And so I would write a chapter and send it to Carolyn, and then she would just completely do whatever she wanted, whether it's taking out pages, adding pages, and then send it back to me, and then we would slowly whittle it down to where it was a chapter where we both went, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be.
And part of the you deal with it is that we did have those moments, but it was more like if one of us hit a wall. Like if we felt like we needed to just take another go at a chapter, but it was our own. I mean, I wrote the original voice of Emma, and Jay wrote the original voice of Josh, and then we switched so much that they all feel like ours. But if I was writing Emma and I just couldn't describe a certain moment or even a scene, I'd send it to Jay and I'd say, you deal with it. And often Jay would write Emma's voice, or I would write Josh's voice, so we really got comfortable writing each other's characters' voices. But also we learned a lot about our characters through what the other person wrote. So I felt like I had a vision of who Emma was in the beginning, and then Jay added certain dialogue either in Emma's chapters or when Emma was talking in Josh's chapters, where it really sort of fine-tuned her character and added a lot of stuff that I didn't even know was there.
Yeah, that was amazing to discover what you consider your character because of another author working on it.
Yeah,
It's fascinating. Yeah.
And even when we were working on Josh, I think early on we sort of didn't know who he was, and I said, well, he's a skater. He's tall, he has red hair. And Jay was like, oh, okay, I can go with that.
Well, it was interesting because we come to writing a little bit different.
Yes.
I mean, suspense is something that is really important to me, and I'm always thinking about what's a way to make the reader turn the page here, you know?
Yeah.
And you've always been, all of your books are so character-oriented, and I don't know, for me, character either has to just be there, or I just don't know what to do with them. And I learned a lot about developing characters working with you on this. And I know you were saying you learned a lot about suspense.
And interestingly, since Emma's chapter starts off the book, I had the first go, and like Jay had never seen my first draft writing before, so I felt this need. I'm like, he is the king of suspense. I mean, there's no 13 Reasons Why is such a suspenseful novel. And I was like, I need to impress him. We haven't signed a contract to write this book together. I could send him something really terrible. And so I felt like I had that in my head. I'm like, Jay, and we sort of had some conversations about what could be a really suspenseful way to kick off the book. And I just felt like the first time I sent him, I'm like, I got it. Just blow this one out of the water. Yeah. But really, suspense was something in our minds the whole time we were writing the book.
And did you let other people read it while you were writing, or was it just between the two of you?
Our agents read it at some point.
Like 100 pages.
They read the first 100 pages, gave a couple suggestions that we then went and put into the novel, and then we just finished the whole thing.
The only people we really talked about the book with were our respective spouses.
They had
a lot of input. Because this book was so much a conversation, because we were creating something that doesn't exist, like time traveling through 15 years in the future through Facebook profiles. And so there was a lot of just questions of how would we create this world and what were the rules. And so they got involved in some of our debates. We had Joan Marie in Jay's corner, Jonas in my corner. But no one read anything. And it was kind of like, it was good because there were already two chefs, so I felt like we needed to just do this on our own.
Yeah, and it's like anytime we write Rachel and I only can tell one other person. Like for the first book, I was living with my friend Nick at the time, and she confided in her sister in the book of decades because it makes it stronger just between the two of you. And like I always say that.
And did Nick and Rachel's sister read it also, or just hear the dialogue?
Just heard us talk about it. I don't even know if they ever heard a single word of it, but it was just they knew about it because it was top secret from everybody else. So we didn't want anyone to know we were writing a book together.
But you wrote Nick and Nora. I don't think I heard about Nick and Nora until you sold it. Like you wrote it sort of in secret one summer, right? Yeah. Just as like a fun thing.
Just as a lark, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to me because I had never written thinking of who my audience was, but then writing with Rachel for the first time, I was like, oh, my audience is Rachel for this book. Like, and I you felt that way in writing with each other.
I think we were trying to sort of write something that someone else would want to read, that someone who you really respected would want to read, right?
Yeah. It was interesting to think of our audiences. Like, there are plenty of people that read both of our books and like them, but you definitely have your base and I have my base, and to think that they're both going to be reading this book, it was interesting. I don't know, I was fascinated thinking, how are people going to read this book? Like, people that love 13 Reasons Why, knowing I wrote with somebody else. And I don't know, I mean, it didn't really shape the way we were writing, but it was fun to think about.
I mean, I hope that both of our voices are in the book. So, I mean, I feel like they are. I mean, it's a mutual voice we have, but I think that's also like enough of both of our voices that hopefully both of our readerships will.
I think the meshing was amazing. It's weird to say because I'm one of the people that wrote it, but
it's extraordinary. The meshing is amazing.
Yeah,
I can say you were meshing
well. Yeah, and so I think that if I would, I mean, I could imagine writing a book by myself, because it seemed like so many of our ideas were very similar. It just kind of like we came to the ideas faster because we were working with somebody else.
It's true.
But like if I saw the book on the shelf with just your name on it and I read it, I wouldn't think you had any help with it.
Yeah.
It would be just like one of your books. It was weird.
I think that's why it was like me, only better. You know, right? What is that commercial? Me, only better.
I don't know. It should be a commercial.
It's like some kind of brand. It was like working alone with double speed.
Double speed, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Okay.